Will Liam Lawson sink or swim? That is going to be the big question that we're going to be asking in 2025. Now that we know that Lawson is going to be a Red Bull driver next year, taking over from Sergio Perez, who of course the day before Lawson was announced as his successor, it was confirmed that he would be departing the Red Bull team after 4 seasons. But out with the old, in with the new, as they say, and Lawson is really going to have a real test on his hands when he steps up into that Red Bull seat for a full season in 2025, alongside, of course, the reigning world champion Max Verstappen. And it marks quite a rise for the Kiwi driver because he's been a part of the Red Bull family since 2017. And during that time, he has obviously risen through the junior ranks, racing in different categories, all the way up to Formula One. And he's won in every series that he's competed in. And clearly Red Bull see a real talent in Liam, and that's why they've decided to make this decision that Perez was no longer viable in that seat, and then they need to put some fresh talent in there. And they decided to go with Liam as the driver who would be taking on that responsibility of being their second driver, especially after 2024 did not go as Red Bull was expecting in regards to the Constructors' Championship. Yes, they won the Drivers' Championship again with Max, but the Constructors didn't go as planned. They finished down in 3rd place behind both Ferrari and McLaren. But Red Bull's decision to go with Lawson as their second driver for next year doesn't just highlight what an incredible rise Lawson has made through the junior ranks since he became part of the Red Bull family. It also is a bold statement from Red Bull itself, because as they've done in the past, this is the 6th time that they will have promoted one of their young academy drivers to their top team, and all of those 6 drivers have raced in less than 30 Grand Prix when they've been promoted. So on that list is Sebastian Vettel, who of course went on to win 4 World Championships with Red Bull. Also included on the list is of course the current full-time world champion Max Verstappen. You've also got Pierre Gasly, who of course is making a name for himself in Alpine. You also have Danny Kvyat, who it didn't quite work out for him at Red Bull. Then you have, of course, the most recent example before Lawson was Alex Albon, and he is currently, after a difficult time at Red Bull, now rebuilding his career at Williams. And like I said, when all of those drivers made their Red Bull debut, they had raced in less than 30 Grand Prix. And out of those 6, it will be Lawson that will be the least experienced of the lot. He's only raced in 11 Grand Prix for the junior team. So that only showcases what a huge risk Red Bull is taking in promoting Lawson this early in his career. I think that it's clear that Red Bull has clearly seen something in Lawson that makes them think that he is ready to take on not just the challenge of being able to cope with being in a team that's fighting at the front of the grid, but also being able to cope with the pressure of being teammate to Max Verstappen. Clearly, they're happy with his mentality and his work ethic that makes them think that he would be a great fit for that second Red Bull seat. And I think it's not just what he's done in Formula 1 recently, in his, obviously, the 6 Grand Prix he raced this season and the 5 he raced for AlphaTauri, as it was originally called, in 2023. I would say also in his reserve driver duties for both of the Red Bull teams, I think clearly they've been impressed with his work behind the scenes and in engineering and so on. What also struck me was how Christian Horner was saying that Red Bull had been impressed with Liam's ability to go wheel to wheel with some of the top drivers this year, and that he wasn't afraid to mix it with the best on the grid. We saw a clear indication as to the type of aggression that he can bring when he races. He's one of those drivers that has a sort of controlled aggression. He's not going to just drive you off the track, but he'll make you work hard to overtake him if you're battling with him. And we saw this in particular with Fernando Alonso at the US Grand Prix, particularly in the sprint race, where he and Lawson battled, and Lawson really rattled Alonso. Alonso actually spoke to him after the race and clearly wasn't happy with how he defended his position. He felt he crossed the line in terms of how he defended his position, but Lawson, credit to him, he's stuck his ground, stood up for himself, and didn't feel that there was anything wrong with how he raced against Alonso. But in saying that, even though Red Bull has come out and said that they really admire his wheel-to-wheel racing and how aggressive he is, there was obviously that time in Mexico when he was battling with Checo that he kind of crossed the line in terms of how they felt that he raced against one of the other Red Bull drivers. So I think they were quite vocal in that he had kind of gone a bit too far for their liking anyway. Obviously, when he battled Checo in Mexico, I think he pushed Perez off the road and Perez actually picked up a bit of damage on his floor and that ruined his race. So that was almost like a bit of a stark reminder to him that even though it's great that he's getting his elbows out and being aggressive, he needed to be do it in a more controlled manner, especially when racing against other Red Bull drivers. It was Helmut Marko in particular that was quite outspoken about Lawson's driving in Mexico, almost as a bit of a warning to him to keep his racing clean, which if you look at the 6 races that he did for RB, in general he did keep his racing clean and he did keep out of trouble. It was only a couple of minor incidents here and there that he was involved in. So that's really the reasons behind why Red Bull decided that Lawson was the right choice for who they wanted to hire for that second seat. But in spite of this, nothing can prepare you for going into what everyone, I think, in general would agree as the toughest seat in Formula One, certainly at this moment in time anyway. Going up against Max Verstappen in that Red Bull, it's like facing Tiger Woods in his prime, being one-on-one with Michael Jordan on the court. It's as tough as it gets, and when that car is so geared towards Max's driving style and what he likes to get out of the car, it only leaves the second driver playing catch-up and having to get their head around how the car works. Liam's going to have to try and cope with that, and I think unlike previous drivers, I think he is well aware with that. But to be fair to Liam, one advantage he has over other drivers, and what makes him stand out to the others, is that he is very adaptable to whatever discipline he races in. Whatever category he's raced in the past, he's always been able to adapt very quickly, and he's won on debut in a lot of the series that he's raced in, from F4, F3, F2, Super Formula, DTM. It's really impressive, and that will, I think, stand him in good stead of getting up to speed quite quickly in that Red Bull. But of course, as well as talking about why Liam has got that seat, we also have to talk about the fact that Yuki Tsunoda has yet again been overlooked for that promotion, despite the fact he's come off the back of his best season in Formula One to date, and clearly has shown that he is worthy of earning that promotion to that top seat. But whatever it is, something is holding him back from earning or deserving that shot at that second Red Bull seat. If you look at Yuki's record compared to all the teammates he's faced, he's met all the requirements that Red Bull have asked of him. He beat Nick de Vries, he beat Daniel Ricciardo, and in the 6 races he did against Lawson, he beat him, particularly in qualifying. He out-qualified in all of the 6 races that they raced alongside each other this year. So it's really difficult to grasp what he needs to do to be able to get that opportunity to race at Red Bull. Now, of course, we all know that Yuki is not just part of the Red Bull Driver Academy, he is also a Honda protege. And obviously Honda are currently engine suppliers to Red Bull. They have been since 2019, but of course they go in their separate ways after 2025, when Honda will go and team up with Aston Martin and Red Bull team up with Ford. But I don't think that in any way could and should have had any bearing on their decision not to hire Yuki. You know, if that is the reason why they haven't decided to go with Yuki, I think that's a pretty poor way of looking at it. Just because he's a Honda junior doesn't mean that Red Bull shouldn't look at him as an option. At the end of the day, he is also part of the Red Bull Driver Academy. He has been for the last few years. So why isn't he being given the same opportunity as others? It doesn't make sense to me. Now, of course, it was Honda that pushed Red Bull to actually give Yuki a chance to drive the Red Bull in the post-season test. Without Honda's plea to Red Bull, that probably wouldn't have happened, which kind of says everything you need to know about how Red Bull view Yuki. They clearly don't think he is ready to step up to that team despite having done 4 seasons at the junior team. Clearly being in a position where he is obviously a lot more experienced than Liam, and given the progression that he's made in those 4 years, really he should have been viewed as the ideal next step for Red Bull to take in terms of promoting one of their junior drivers. Really, I think that Yuki did deserve a shot. It's not that Liam didn't, it's just that I think that a lot of us feel that Yuki's progression really was enough for him to earn that chance, which obviously he's not going to get now. So now that the onus is on Liam, it's, as I said at the start of the video, it's a sink or swim situation. If he impresses, he'll get a long-term contract and he'll likely be the successor to Max whenever he decides to leave Red Bull. Or on the flip side, if he fails and doesn't deliver, then he will be the latest Red Bull outcast, and he'll be in that position where he's thrown out of the top team and trying to rebuild his career, like Pierre Gasly, like Alex Albon. What's going to be interesting for me is if Lawson is in a position where he's not meeting Red Bull's expectations, what will they do and when will they decide to take action? Honestly, if that scenario plays out, I can see another mid-season driver swap coming up that we've seen in the past by Red Bull, where Liam is demoted back to Racing Bulls and they decide to promote Yuki to the top team for the second half of the season and see how he fares in that seat. Another interesting point is, what if Red Bull yet again snubbed Yuki for the promotion and instead went with Isaac Hadjar, who of course, as I record this video, being announced as the second RB driver for next year. So that would surely send a clear message to Yuki once and for all that he's going to have to move out of the Red Bull family if he ever wants to have any chance of earning a top seat in Formula 1. Because as long as he's in that Racing Bulls team, he's only going to be viewed as a guinea pig, the yardstick for other drivers like Hadjar coming through from the junior ranks to go up against and try and beat, to show that they're worthy of earning that promotion to the senior team. While we're all obviously disappointed that Tsunoda's obviously not got that opportunity and yet again he's missed out, there shouldn't be any sort of remorse towards Lawson, because at the end of the day, he hasn't made the decision. It's Red Bull that's made the decision to go with him. Just because Yuki deserves it doesn't mean that Lawson doesn't. He's a nice guy, he's a good driver. It's just, I think all of us are kind of worried about how he might fare. You know, if it doesn't go well, it's going to really have a big impact on his career. And the last thing you want for him as a young driver, you know, he's only 22 years old, is for him to suffer a major setback. We all really want him to do well, I think, more than anything. I think that this also confirms that Red Bull is reverting back to its old system of trusting in its youth. We haven't seen that for a while, because obviously they've had to go in the opposite direction of looking for an experienced driver to be sort of a stopgap solution. So clearly they now feel they're in a position where they can now back their talent from the Red Bull Junior program again. And it's not going to be an easy transition for Lawson, because of course at the start of next season he's going to be racing on circuits that he's never driven before, such as Melbourne, the first race of the year, China, Miami. These are circuits he's never raced on, let alone driven an FP1 session. So it's not going to be the smooth induction that he needs to start his life at Red Bull. Look, none of us want to see Lawson fail at the end of the day, because this is as tough a assignment as you're ever going to get in Formula 1. But if he cannot be close to Max's pace and doesn't meet Red Bull's expectations of him, then he will be out the door before you know it. So, you know, fingers crossed, Liam can step up to the plate and deliver what Red Bull wants, and he can stay at Red Bull and have a happy and long career fighting at the front of the field. So there you go, that's it for today's video. Please remember to like the video, and if you are new around here, to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.